Hey folks, welcome to another Irish Whiskey review with me, Marty Macaulay. Tonight we're going to be reviewing an exciting little brand coming from County Down. Now, harks back to a much earlier time, and they've even published a book to give you the history of the brand. And actually, it covers an awful lot more ground than that. It's extremely well written, but we'll get to that in a little minute. And what we're going to review is Matt Darcy Old Irish Whiskey. This is a trade sample, so not to confuse the issue, they sent me this, so I didn't buy this myself, which I always like to keep people clear on. I'm also not opening it myself. Hang on, not a good sign. Yeah, whoops. And what I'll say is this is a blend. Okay, this is a blend whiskey. Now, I know some people sometimes get a little bit confused in this. Blend is a mix of malted whiskey and grain whiskey. Grain whiskey's made in the big continuous still. It's an awful lot cheaper, not as much flavour in it. And that's primarily what blended whiskey is. It's to impart good flavours onto the whiskey, but keep the cost down. So it's a key thing. It's an important thing. Makes up well over 90% of the whiskey market, to be honest. Lots of people would have you think everybody's sitting quaffing single malts day and daily. This is not the case. The vast majority of whiskey that's sold is blended, primarily because of cost. It's just as simple as that. But you get some very good blended whiskey. So I tell you what I'll do. I'll give this a little pour. Now it's 40%. And then we'll have a little talk about the book. Now the book talks about Matt Darcy and Old Newry whiskies, and it's composed by Mr. Michael McKeown, who's the backer of this whole scheme. He's the guy who's putting the money in, and a very nice chap he is. We interviewed him on the show not that long ago, and he was a gentleman. He's in many ways a little bit self-deprecating, because he talks about how he's doing this and that, and you get the impression that whiskey isn't necessarily the actual liquid itself's not where his passion is. The passion is the whole story. He's wanting to convey as much of this and bring all of this back, and he spent a huge amount of money to do it as close and replicate it as close as possible. Now the book, it's got lovely illustrations in it. The old advertising, and it's a bit of an autobiography. It's a bit of a historical book about the distillery, about Matt Darcy himself, and about various other bits and pieces. He's spent a huge amount of time on this, and it really is very, very good, very thorough, very well researched, and I'm just trying to find some of the relevant pictures on it, because it really is something to see. Let me see. Yeah. So this is the one I was actually looking for. Did you see the old bottles? You see the old bottles with the stars on it? Advertisement. This is a bottle of old from 1900. It goes on, and it even talks about some of the old other distilleries about at the time. But one of the best things in this book, I'm sort of flapping about here because I'm wanting to get to this one, because he makes a claim which is backed up by one of the late great Jonathan Barden, who in his book The Plantation of Ulster said that Newry suffered a massive fire. And anyone who knows the history of Newry, it was taken over by a man called Nicholas Bagnall in 1603. But in 1600, much of it had been destroyed by fire caused by a whisky distiller. Now, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that they were distilling whisky in 1600 and that it was official. Now, we have another distillery that was granted a licence, and they say they are the oldest licensed distillery, and they are. But that was because they only started issuing licences. You issue a licence and then you have to pay tax. That's why they were granted a licence. But in this, he talks a bit about Newry whisky is the oldest authorised whisky in the world, being chartered by King Maurice MacLachlan in 1144, okay, and endorsed by Turlach Linne O'Neill in 1575. Now, anyone who doesn't know about Turlach Linne O'Neill, he was one of the heads of the hugely important Earls of Tyrone and the O'Neills, who were the ruling family, certainly in Ulster, one of the most powerful families in Ireland. If you ever read about Turlach Linne O'Neill, he was what's a good way of putting this? He was a man who could quaff a lot of drink. He would have known about whiskey if it was available. So I think it's probably it's accurate enough. If Jonathan Barden wrote it down on paper, we take it as gospel, because he certainly was the most authoritative historian I've ever met. He was a fabulous man. A century and a half later, Mr. John Rackstrow, distiller of Newry, died, and in his will left his back house, situated in High Street, in the locality of that listed in Bagnall's rent rolls, a sure sign that the tradition had continued apace in the interim. So, we are getting more history of Newry whisky. And this, I thoroughly enjoyed the 10-year-old, which was a real quality presentation, a nice whisky, really nice. So now we have a more entry level, if you like. And it's coming on. Now it's at 40%. I haven't any water with me because I've tried it before. I've tried this little touch. It doesn't really need it. Now on the nose it's quite hay. It's quite floral. Now that you get from your grain whiskies. Grain whiskies are much lighter. You're getting that floral, like hay, hay, flowers. Not a huge amount of body to it when you're on the nose, you know. On this, there's certainly lemon drops, little pear drops, sweety notes, boiled sweets. Touch of fresh grass, actually, which is slightly different to the floral. Yeah, so you're getting those light floral notes, hay, a little bit of pear, a little bit of lemon, and touch of cut grass. So it's okay. There's not a huge amount of depth to the nose, but it's fine. Not a huge body to it. Again, you're not getting that because of the grain. Because it's a blend, that's one of the things that you would get. It stands out quite a lot from malted single malt and your blended whiskies. Now, again, you're getting those floral notes, little bits of lemon again coming through. There's a touch of spice there, which I want to say it's a little bit out of place. It's just a touch out of place with the spice. quite pleasant. Yep, there's a touch of cinnamon there. Again, it's not sweety touches. No, it's not cinnamon that you're going to put over a custard tart. This is a cinnamon lozenge. It's quite pleasant actually. On the finish, you're getting oak, touch of sweetness. It is a touch custardy actually on the nose, or on the finish, I should say. You're getting that sweetness, which complements that little cinnamon kick you get in the palate. And on the finish, it's actually got quite a pleasant finish. There's actually a very dairy note on it. If someone turned around and said to me that they were getting milk, I wouldn't say they're wrong in that. It's coming through as that sort of dairy note, custardy, almost milky cream, that kind of sweetness, that kind of finish to it. That's why I think the spice, that little spicy kick, is not necessarily working that well for me. But that's a nice easy drinking whiskey. Nothing wrong with that at all. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's the best whiskey I've ever tried, because it's absolutely, of course it's not. But it's entry level stuff, and very pleasant. It's standing out quite well. As a blend, an entry level blend, I have to say this is palatable and quite pleasant. It's not going to rock your world, but then it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be an everyday drinking whiskey, and lots of people will like this. I just think it's a slightly bit disjointed with the spicy kick there. It runs through that gamut of different flavours and scents, which is nice. It's good to see that it does taste a little bit different. Now this is £35 a bottle, which is a little bit above the big boys entry level. Now when you're talking the big boy entry levels, you're talking your Bushmills and Jameson. They are massive and are pumping out huge volume, and they've been doing it for a long time and cut the prices. But if you want to try something a little bit different, again, that lemon note, it's actually now honey lemon, because it's been out a little while, which is a sign of quality in that it's developing in flavours all the time. It's developing that little bit. It's honey lemon, it's turning into, those almost throat sweetie type thing. This is pleasant enough. It really is. I'm going to have to say it's a little bit, for the competition, for the guy walking in picking off the shelf, it's possibly a little bit off-putting at the £35 price point. But it's a well-made whiskey, it's a well-made blend, and it tastes a little bit, it tastes of itself. So it has a characteristic of itself, which is a good thing. To mark it out of 10, I'm going to have to say it's a little bit touch overpriced. So don't necessarily let that put you off, because you might like it an awful lot better than I do, but I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Because just where it's at price wise, it's moved from the entry level to it's moved from Division 4 into Division 3 sort of thing. It's moved up that little bit level, so it needs to face up to the competition that's there, and it's pleasant, nice, but it would need a little bit more from me. But stick with the Matt Darcy story, because the other ones I've reviewed are very good. This is a place this is going to be going places. It's going to be something to see when it's finished. There's a lot of money being spent on this, and grab this book. By the way, if you can get a copy of the book, because it's a great social history. It's got a nice heritage theme to it, and when you buy in, because this is the most important thing about whiskey, you buy into the story. This and this will go together. So listen, take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.